This module describes steps to take while processing the prawn catch in order to maintain product freshness, quality, and safety. This module is complemented by the catch handling safety, workplace hygiene, and personal hygiene modules, which should be completed prior to commencing this module. Finally, this module is designed to complement the onboard product handling manual or any approved processing arrangement stipulated by the company when processing prawns, which must be read and understood by all crew. The quality and safety of the prawn product on your boat will be affected by the way you and other crew handle and treat the product from the time of capture to the time they are unloaded from your boat. All vessels should have onboard a HACCP food safety system that has been specifically designed for your vessel to help manage prawn quality and safety. HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. Basically, a HACCP system identifies potential risks to food safety, in this case the prawn catch, and describes actions that must be taken to reduce these risks. Sorting is the first step in processing the catch. This should be done quickly using clean and sanitized processing equipment. If the catch is muddy, the contents of each cod end may need to be hosed down before being spilled into the back hopper or sorting tray. This can be done while the cod ends are alongside the boat, or alongside the sorting tray. The first option reduces the amount of mud and debris that accumulates on the deck. An alternative is to stream the cod end for a few minutes as the vessel steams forward. If the catch is still muddy after being spilled on the sorting tray, it may need to be hosed down again before processing begins. For vessels with a back hopper, water in the hopper may need to be drained and refilled repeatedly until the water is clean. The next step is to manually sort the prawns from the bycatch. The prawns will need to be separated by species, with each species placed in separate prawn baskets, sometimes called lug baskets. The bycatch should be returned to the sea as quickly as possible. Byproducts such as bugs or squid will need to be separated from the prawn catch. Soft and broken, and any other defective prawns will need to be separated from the good quality prawns, although this can also be done during the grading process. During busy fishing periods it may be necessary for the cod ends to be hauled and emptied before the crew have cleared the hopper and sorting table from the previous shot. Prawns from a previous shot must be separated from the newly landed catch so they can be processed as quickly as possible. Dumping a new catch on top of an older catch means prawns from the previous shot will be sorted last, dramatically increasing the risk of spoilage, or at least dropped heads. The weight of the new catch may also damage the prawns from the previous, reducing their quality and value. Before the new catch is released from the cod ends, it is essential that the crew shovel the remaining catch into the hopper, or to one side of the sorting tray. If the back hopper has covers, they can be put in place and the catch spilled on the covers. Prawns must now be dipped in a chemical solution designed to prevent black spot. Black spot is a naturally occurring process that occurs underneath the shell in response to exposure to oxygen. Black spot is not harmful and is not an indicator of spoilage, although it looks unsightly. The chemical commonly used to prevent black spot is sodium metabisulfite, or meta, which is mixed with clean seawater. The catch handling safety module contains information describing how to safely use this chemical. The Safety Management System, or SMS, should also contain information regarding the safe handling of meta. On many boats a dipping hopper is used to dip prawns into the meta solution. This hopper is located at the end of the sorting conveyor, so that prawns can fall from the conveyor directly into the dip hopper, for a period of around 12 minutes. At the end of this period, a second conveyor lifts the prawns out of the solution and drops them onto the sorting table, often called a piano, for grading. On boats not fitted with this hopper, baskets of prawns will need to be manually placed into a dip tank containing the meta solution. The basket should be agitated to ensure all prawns are adequately exposed to the solution, and after about 12 minutes, the prawns are lifted out of the tank, taking care to drain the basket over the tank to avoid losing water. Next, the prawns are graded by weight. Common prawn grades include U15, 1020, and 1525. U15 means that fewer than 15 prawns are required to weigh 1 pound. 10-20 means that between 10 and 20 prawns are required to weigh 1 pound. These grades predate the metric system in Australia but are still used today to indicate prawn weight. Many large trawlers have automatic grading machines to grade the prawns by multiple weight categories simultaneously. Grading machines are very accurate, although it is wise to periodically weigh a random sample of graded prawns to ensure they make the grade. On many other trawlers, grading is done by hand using electronic scales. Manual grading typically entails taking a random sample of prawns to weigh. The sample size will need to be at least sufficient to fill 2 cupped hands held together. The prawns are then spread out to see the sizes, and individuals smaller or larger than the majority are placed on the scales and weighed. As 1 pound is equivalent to 454 grams, prawns from the sample will need to be added or removed until this weight is reached. Once reached, the number of prawns that make up the sample are counted. This is the number of prawns required to weigh 1 pound, sometimes referred to as the average count, and because the count is based on the smallest and largest individuals in the sample, the count accurately reflects the size range of the catch. It may be tempting to randomly select a few handfuls of prawns, weigh them without sorting by size, and counting the number that make up 454 grams. This is called a random count. This method can be inaccurate, particularly when most of the prawns are close to the upper or lower limit of a grade. For example, if most prawns in a sample are 10-20 grade, a few very large prawns in the sample may adjust the grade to U15. The result is a carton of prawns graded at U15 but mostly containing smaller 10-20 prawns. Finally, all prawns that have been damaged in any way, including dropped heads, should be graded as soft and broken. To ensure prawn grades are determined accurately, appropriate electronic or balance scales will need to be used. It is essential that these are services at appropriate intervals, for example, once per year, and by a licensed contractor. Before leaving port, the scales should be checked they are operations, and that calibration weights are on board. Scales must be calibrated daily, or at intervals specified in the boat's product handling manual, prior to processing the catch from the first shot. The prawn catch will need to be packaged after processing and grading. Enough cartons should be made before the day or night's fishing. They should be stacked in a dry location, close by for easy reach when required. Not all cartons require plastic liners, so it is important to know when liners are required. On some boats, or in some instances, catches of tiger or banana prawns are placed in cartons called bulk packs, which generally hold around 13 kilograms of product. These cartons are usually placed in the piano ready to receive prawns that have been dipped and graded. These cartons should not be overfilled, as bulging and misshaped cartons are hard to get out of the snap freezer and don't stack well. Before prawns are placed into these cartons, they should be well drained of water, and any foreign material removed. As the carton is filled, it should be shaken to settle the prawns. When full, the carton is removed from the piano, and the liner and carton closed or stapled. The date and prawn grade should now be written on the carton. All other information, such as boat name and prawn species, should have already been written on the carton. The cartons should then be stacked until ready to be placed in the snap freezer. They should not be on the deck too long before being placed into the snap. Rapid refrigeration is key to a quality product. As the name implies, set weight carton must be filled to the designated weight, usually 5 kilograms, 10 kilograms, or 12 kilograms. There are 2 ways that this can be achieved. The first is using a tare weight, which entails first placing an empty carton and liner on the scale, and then pressing the tare button. To check the scale has recorded the tare weight, the carton and liner are then removed from the scale. The digital readout should display the weight of the carton and liner with a minus sign in front of it. The carton can now be placed back on the scale and filled to the designated 5, 10, or 12 kilograms weight. The second option is to use gross weight, which simply means the prawns are placed into the carton until a designated weight is achieved, thus accounting for the weight of the carton and liner. For example, prawns may be added to a 10 kg carton until the scales display a weight of 11.1 kg, with 1.1 kg being the weight of the carton and liner. It is of course essential to check that the display reads 0 weight before anything is placed on the scales. It is also important, irrespective of which weighing method is used, to know how much overpick is permissible, an amount of prawns over the designated weight. This ensures the cartons do not weigh less than their designated weight, and that they are not filled too much. This packaging is unique because 3 kg cartons are placed into a master carton before being placed into the snap freezer. Most commonly these cartons are used to package tiger or endeavor prawns. Prawns are first graded for size and then placed into the carton. It is particularly important to ensure that these prawns are accurately graded and the highest quality. Prawns should be well drained. The top layer of prawns in each carton must be finger-laid in rows, with each prawn facing the outside of the carton and the tails facing the inside of the carton. When 3 of these cartons are filled, they are placed into the master carton. Each master carton contains prawns of the same species and grade. They are placed into the master carton the same way, with the top side of each carton facing the top side of the master carton. These cartons are placed into the snap freezer with the top side facing upwards, so any water drains to the bottom of each carton, away from the finger-laid prawns. Much of the information that is needed is pre-printed on the cartons. However, additional information such as prawn species, grade, and date must be clearly written within the designated space. Some information may need to be written on several sides of the carton. Information that may be required on the cartons includes product description, species, cooked or raw, grade, for example 10/15, additives used, for example metabisulfite added, vessel name and number, for example FV Pisces, P145, net weight, date of catch, export registration number, if applicable. The prawns in the cartons are now ready to be snap frozen. The snap freezer will be located on deck or in the freezer hold, and are designed to bring the temperature of the product down quickly to around -18 degrees Celsius. They are then held in a storage freezer at this temperature or colder until unloaded. The skipper and/or the engineer will closely monitor snap and freezer hold temperatures. Before loading the snap, the freezer fans should be turned off. The snap should then be filled quickly, especially if located in the hold, to avoid an increase in hold temperature. Make sure the cartons and the liners are securely closed. Cartons must be handled carefully to avoid damage, particularly when passed from the deck through the freezer hatch to crew below. Cartons should be loaded in such a way that allows airflow around the sides of each carton. When loading is complete, snap doors or partitions should be put back in place and the snap fans turned on. It is important to know where product from each shot is loaded in the snap, particularly during banana prawn fishing, to avoid pulling product too early from the snap. A blackboard near the freezer hatch is often used to record the number of cartons by species and grade for each. Once the prawns have reached at least -18 degrees Celsius, they are transferred from the snap to the hold. This area is usually adjacent to the snap freezer, and it is simply a matter of unloading the cartons from the snap and stacking them in the hold correctly. Prior to unloading the snap, appropriate PPE should be worn to protect from the cold and frostbite. Typically, at least 2 people are required to empty the snap and stack the cartons. As the freezer hold is a confined space, at least one other person should be notified you are about to enter the hold. See the confined space module for details. The hold fans should be turned off, and the task of unloading the snap completed as quickly as possible to minimize an increase in the hold temperature. Stack the cartons so that they are secure and do not move about, particularly in rough weather. Frozen prawns are very brittle and can easily be damaged when handling the cartons. Use baffles, bars, or other means to hold the cartons in place. Do not throw or drop cartons. Make sure the freezer fan is not obstructed and a good airflow circulates the hold. Follow any particular procedures for separating cartons of different species or grading as per the skipper's instructions. Make sure cooked and raw prawns are kept in different bays. When finished, make sure the freezer fan is operating and all entrance hatches and bungs are securely closed. There are 2 major problems that can occur when unloading prawns: 1. Increasing prawn temperature and thawing. And 2. Prawn damage due to dropped cartons. Unloading should begin only when the freezer truck or container is ready to receive the prawns. The crew should be dressed in appropriate freezer equipment including boots, gloves, freezer suit and beanie or balaclava. Freezer hatches must not to be removed until it is time to put the conveyors or lifting equipment in place. During unload, bunkering of fuel and oil should cease to avoid the risk of contamination. If the unload is stopped or delayed for long periods, then the crew should come out of the freezer and freezer hatches put back in place. Container or truck doors should also be closed if there is a delay in the unload, and no product should be stored on deck or anywhere else during the delay. Only product that has been cooled to at least -18 degrees Celsius should be unloaded. Random temperature testing of cartons must be undertaken as the unload progresses. To avoid damaging cartons, make sure they are correctly stacked on conveyor belts, pallets or other unloading devices. They must not be handled roughly. Any dropped or damaged cartons are to be put aside and repacked, or repacked in bulk and marked HACCP. Product assessment must take place to ensure that the product unloaded has been correctly graded, weighed, labeled, and fit for human consumption. Regular onboard assessments, daily where possible, will ensure most errors are corrected quickly, as opposed to onshore assessments, which can take up to 3 to 4 weeks to be communicated to crews. The crew will be paid based on the quality of the product. Ensure you know what you are unloading on board and on shore at the cold store. Assessments should be conducted daily using a cross-section of the previous night's catch, varying the species and grade from day to day. Emphasis should be placed on grades that display a requirement for improvement from previous onboard assessments. During high catch periods, onboard assessments should be conducted as and when practical. For tigers, around 2 3 kg cartons of different grades and species should be assessed per night, and more frequently if a problem has recently been encountered. It is essential to put yourself in the customer's position, by conducting regular self-assessments of the finished product. The onboard assessment is obligatory and is as follows: a prawn sample from the previous night's fishing is brought out of the freezer and thawed in seawater that has MET added. The prawns are then drained for 2 minutes, before being weighed to find the net weight of the prawn sample. Each prawn is then individually weighed, and the count of all the prawns in the grade is recorded, as is the count of the prawns out of grade. The count of reject prawns, including damaged, out-of-species and black spot prawns is also counted and recorded. Next, the percentage of out-of-grade prawns and the percentage of reject prawns is calculated, and evaluated against the acceptable tolerances indicated in the product handling manual or approved arrangement with the company. The following information marked on the cartons should also be checked: species name, date, grading, weight. The prawns in the cartons are now ready to be snap frozen. The snap freezer will be located on deck or in the freezer hold, and are designed to bring the temperature of the product down quickly to around -18 degrees Celsius. They are then held in a storage freezer at this temperature or colder until unloaded. The skipper and/or the engineer will closely monitor snap and freezer hold temperatures. Before loading the snap, the freezer fans should be turned off. The snap should then be filled quickly, especially if located in the hold, to avoid an increase in hold temperature. Make sure the cartons and the liners are securely closed. Cartons must be handled carefully to avoid damage, particularly when passed from the deck through the freezer hatch to crew below. Cartons should be loaded in such a way that allows airflow around the sides of each carton. When loading is complete, snap doors or partitions should be put back in place and the snap fans turned on. It is important to know where product from each shot is loaded in the snap, particularly during banana prawn fishing, to avoid pulling product too early from the snap. A blackboard near the freezer hatch is often used to record the number of cartons by species and grade for each. This is a requirement to ensure that the prawn product is practically free from harmful pathogens including bacteria and viruses. In order to achieve this outcome, it is important that all possible sources of contamination are controlled, which means maintaining high standards of personal and workplace hygiene. Subsequently, prawns are tested for the following: standard plate count to identify and count bacteria, presence of coagulase-positive Staphylococcus, presence of cadmium, and the concentration of sodium metabisulfite, or similar product used to prevent black spot. The procedure to test for these pathogens is pretty much the same for each, with the exception of the number of samples to be taken. Basically, 1 or more 100-gram samples are required to be placed into clean Ziploc bags and then are labeled and stored in the freezer until the unload. The sampling area, equipment to collect the sample, Ziploc bag, and hands must be clean prior to use. The sample is collected and inserted into the bag without contacting other surfaces. Matty wipes should be used to wipe down sampling surfaces and equipment before taking the sample. Sterile gloves or gloves wipes with Matty wipes are used to handle the sample. The samples are then placed into a sample carton or container with the vessel name, registration number, and date clearly marked. A laboratory analysis request form will need to be placed in carton, and depending on the sample the species name will need to be included. The product handling manual or a similar approved arrangement will need to be consulted to ensure sample collection, size, labeling, and handling is not compromised. Several steps are necessary in preparation for cooking prawns. This includes checking that the cooker and cooling tank are clean and ready for use, wearing appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE, such as an apron and gloves, using only clean, fresh seawater in both tanks, and that cooked prawns are not contaminated due to contact with uncooked prawns, baskets that have held uncooked prawns, or seawater that has come into contact with uncooked prawns. This includes the cooling or brine tank if it has been used to hold uncooked prawns prior to cooking. Water must be vigorously boiling before the product is placed in the cooker. The prawns are then cooked until the water is again vigorously boiling and the prawns are floating on the surface. The meat uncooked prawns should just be pulling away from the shell, and the raw uncooked prawns will have changed color, from green to orange. Cooked prawns must then be quickly cooked for several minutes, drained, packaged, and then snap frozen. The prawns in the cartons are now ready to be snap frozen. The snap freezer will be located on deck or in the freezer hold, and are designed to bring the temperature of the product down quickly to around -18°C. They are then held in a storage freezer at this temperature or colder until unloaded. The skipper and/or the engineer will closely monitor snap and freezer hold temperatures. Before loading the snap, the freezer fans should be turned off. The snap should then be filled quickly, especially if located in the hold, to avoid an increase in hold temperature. Make sure the cartons and the liners are securely closed. Cartons must be handled carefully to avoid damage, particularly when passed from the deck through the freezer hatch to crew below. Cartons should be loaded in such a way that allows airflow around the sides of each carton. When loading is complete, snap doors or partitions should be put back in place and the snap fans turned on. It is important to know where product from each shot is loaded in the snap, particularly during banana prawn fishing, to avoid pulling product too early from the snap. A blackboard near the freezer hatch is often used to record the number of cartons by species and grade for each